Hi guys, and welcome back to the Big Sew Along. I'm Jenny, and as always, I thank you very much for choosing to spend some time with me. This week is week 2 of our Sewing with Tina Givens Patterns series. Last week we were talking about garments with set-in sleeves, and the tips and things we went over last week for set-in sleeves also apply to sleeveless garments. The other kind of garment, in terms of tops and dresses, that Tina does often is one that is cut on 2 folds. So there's no shoulder seam and there's no front or back seam. It's just an underarm seam and straight down the sides. So I'm referring to that as a grown-on sleeve. And today we are going to talk about how to do, how to check your measurements, pick a size, and alter any of the patterns from Tina that have the grown-on sleeve. So I think this one's actually a pretty quick one, and then we'll come back and talk a little more. Okay, so last week we were talking about set-in sleeves on our Tina Givens garments and how to make sure we're getting the right length in our sleeve by measuring from this seam allowance to this seam allowance, which works in a garment with set-in sleeves or a sleeveless garment, because this is just the distance from the top of your shoulder to the front of your shirt where your armpit is going to be. You have this extension here that goes under your arm. That accounts for at least 2, maybe even 3 inches in the actual armhole. Because we measure from here to here for our width, we're just assuming that this is enough to go under our arm. If, however, you're using something like this one is the Annika, any of the patterns with a grown-on sleeve, so something that looks like this, that measurement is not going to be the same. On my chart, it looks like my underarm is at 7.5 inches from the shoulder. Assuming my shoulder is right there, it looks like this would be just about perfect because that's 7.5 inches right there. However, with a grown-on sleeve, you don't have anything that goes underneath your arm. You don't have an extension under here. So you need to account for that in the length. And we're going to do that simply by adding to the top edge. So, how do we know how long our grown-on sleeve needs to be? I measured this shirt. Now, this is a set-in sleeve shirt, but it is a nice loose shirt. It's not tight. And all I'm going to do, you can do this, if you have something with a grown-on sleeve, that's even better, but not everybody does. So, all I'm going to do is measure from the top of my shoulder, and I'm going to try to straighten this out. Because it's fabric, we can do that. I'm going to straighten this out so it's kind of straight. And I can see that the finished measurement on this is almost 11 inches. That means to my Annika pattern, I would have to add 3.5 inches. Okay, so here's my Yuki pattern. And this time, to check my width and my length, I'm going to use another pattern that I have. This one is another Tina Givens pattern that has already been altered. And I like the way it fits. So I'm going to, this Yuki pattern has 2 different sleeves. This is a sleeveless version, and the long sleeve version is cut on the fold up here. This is the long sleeve version is the one I'm going to use. So I'm going to place the top of my Zelda, the shoulder, right here. So the edge of my shoulder meets the edge of this pattern here. And I'm placing the center front right at the center front. And I can see here that I've cut the large and the Zelda. And this edge right here is almost right at the medium on the Yuki. So that is what I'm going to cut. Now I can also see down here that the Yuki is way wider than the Zelda. So I'm going to keep that in mind for later. The Yuki is also a little bit shorter at the side, but at the front, over here at the front, it is about 2 or 3 inches longer, which is fine because this Zelda usually gets a ruffle that's 2 inches long. So I'm going to say that the length on my Yuki is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the size medium. Okay, so I decided to go ahead and add a full 2 inches to the top, just to be safe. Okay, but now let's talk about our neckline. The neckline is obviously not where it needs to be, so we're going to have to trace that off. Okay, so before we move our neckline up, let's check our neckline measurement to make sure it's not too wide. I'm cutting the size medium, which is right here, and you can see I've marked out my seam allowance, which is 5/8 of an inch right here. I'm just going to measure from that mark to the side. That's 5 inches. That's too wide for me. I want mine to be about 4.5 inches, so I'm going to lose a 1/2 inch. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to place a piece of tracing paper right over my neckline, and I'm going to trace it out. That's the front neckline, and that's the back neckline. I'm also going to just trace out this shoulder right here a little bit. Okay, so now I'm just going to move this up. Oh, sorry, we have to lose about a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to cut that right off the center, right here. We're going to cut that off. And now we're going to line that up. That shoulder seam that I marked is right there. And that is going to be our new neckline. Okay, so now let's double check our neckline. That's going to be at 5/8 of an inch, which is right here. And I'm just going to quickly measure that. And now we are at 4.5 inches exactly, so that's perfect. Now, when we added this 2 inches to our sleeve, get all this out of here, sorry. When we added this 2 inches to the top of our sleeve, we also made the sleeve considerably wider down here. So if you don't want it to be that wide, if you want it to be the original measurement, this original measurement was, on this pattern piece, it's, I'm going to call that 7 inches. You can do this. Measure 7 inches down. That's right about here. Take your curvy ruler and just match it up to the, to this point, to the point of your underarm. Right there. Looks about right. And you can use that and taper your sleeve out. Just be sure that you leave about 1.5 inches or 2 inches at the bottom so that when you hem it, it will fold up nicely. But don't, you don't want to do something like this. Well, actually, you could do that if you wanted to. You could also just do something really more straight like that. Okay? I hope that makes sense. I'm going to leave mine because I'm going to put, this has a really cute drawstring detail in the center front, and I'm going to repeat that on my sleeves. Speaking of this detail at the front, let's talk about that. My measurement on this from my shoulders to the top of this first gather is, this first mark, which is the extra small to medium mark, is 15 inches. And when I look at my measurements, I can see that my waist is at 13 inches. 17 inches is my high hip. 15 inches is going to be someplace in between there. I probably don't want it quite that low because it's going to really hit like where I have the most chub. So, or fluff. It's fluff. The most fluff. I want mine to be more at 13 inches. So I am going to move this up 2 inches. The other thing I'm going to do is, I really love this, but I don't want it to curve quite this much. I don't like it to come down this far because it gave me sort of like a basketball effect in the center front when I did that before. So I'm going to shorten that a little bit. I'm going to shorten this to right about here. And now we're going to do the exact same thing we did with our neckline. We're just going to trace that out. Now we're going to find the top of this casing point, and I'm going to make a mark right here where that is. And I'm going to place my new casing marker right there. And I'm going to tape that in place. Okay, so now I have my neckline done. I have my casing adjusted. And now I'm going to talk to you about this side. So the Zelda looks like this. And you can see it has quite a bit of width through here. And this one, the Yuki, has even more than that, which is fine, but I want to take it down a little bit. And how I'm going to do that is really simple. I'm going to turn this way. I'm going to place my curvy ruler right here. And there's no specific way to do it, just do it where it makes sense. So maybe I'll do it this way. That makes more sense to me. So I'm just lining this edge up with my underarm, and this edge up. On this one I'm going to use the smallest size here. So I'm going to match it up like that, a little higher, like that. Now I'm going to turn this back around, and I'm going to cut this off at the smallest size. And now I'm going to taper it into the underarm that I already have. All right, so now I think my Yuki pattern is ready to go. Okay, so you're not gonna be able to see my whole body here, but that's okay. I just want you to see that I have my Yuki assembled, and all I have done, I've done my neckline, which came out really well. I'm wearing the wrong bra for this today, but aside from that, it's fine. I have basted my side seams together. I'm happy with the length, I'm happy with the width, I'm happy with the sleeves, so I don't really need to do anything else in terms of adjusting. This casing here is supposed to be on the inside, but I messed up, so mine's on the outside. But I'm also happy with where that hits me. It hits me right under the bust, so I feel like it could be a little bit lower, but I think I'm going to leave it for now. And now I'm just going to decide what I want to do with my sleeves. Okay, so I hope you can see how measuring is so very important. I forgot to say in this tutorial, like I said, if you need to make the sleeve larger, you're going to add to the top where the fabric is folded. Conversely, if you need to make that sleeve smaller, and often you will, you'll want to just remove the pattern at the same point. And also, in that case, you're going to want to move your neckline down. So here is my final Yuki. And you can see that I have made some alterations to this after I had it pretty much put together. I had the neckline done, and I just had the side seams basted. I decided that for some reason, I have made this pattern before, and that ruched gathered front I really liked. For some reason, I didn't like it in this version. So at the end of the day, I removed that altogether, and I just put two pleats in at the center front. I measured to make sure they're even, and I made them about an inch deep. And I did that. I really wanted something to sort of break up this large scale check. When I bought this fabric, I didn't pay attention to the scale. I just saw pink and white plaid and bought it. Of course. So when I got it, I knew I wanted to do something where I broke up that large scale a little bit. So given that the gathering situation wasn't working for me very well, I decided to go ahead and put the 2 pleats in, and I really like that. I also decided that I felt like the sleeves were just too fussy for some reason. I don't know if it was because I could have tapered them out a little bit, but to be honest, I don't wear long sleeve things that often. I usually wear sleeveless or short sleeve and then wear a sweater or something over it, because I like to, A, I like to layer things, and B, I get hot really easily, so it's just easier for me to have something sleeveless. So I laid my pattern back down on my dress and I recut the armholes to the sleeveless version. Now the sleeveless version of this dress has a sloped shoulder and the one with the sleeves does not. So I did end up with a little bit of a poke out here at the shoulders, and I alleviated that by just taking a little dart in each shoulder, and then I bound my armholes. So here's the thing, my takeaway for you guys so far on working with Tina's patterns, and I have to say, I'm referring to this as working with Tina Gibbons patterns because that's just what we're talking about, but to be honest with you, these same rules should apply to just about everything you make. And you guys know I'm not a big rule follower, so when I say that there are rules, take it with a grain of salt. A, know what your measurements are. B, measure your patterns. Always measure your patterns. I forgot what C was. C is try it on as you go. I know we all hate taking the time to base something together and try it on and take the basting out, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's well worth it if you spend an extra half an hour basting and pulling out basting stitches and you get a garment that you actually really like. The last thing I will say, and I think that this is more geared towards the Tina Gibbons patterns, but also should be applied to just about anything you're making. Be willing to adjust your plans. We all go into a project with a plan and we know exactly what we want it to look like, and sometimes you have to make adjustments along the way. So be willing to add to your hem, add a panel to your hem, add pleats to the front, add darts to the shoulder, add elastic to the sleeves, shorten the sleeves. That kind of thing. Like once you get the basic shape down, you can make all kinds of little tweaks and adjustments that will make you like your garment better and will also make it much more individual. So just keep your mind open to this being a process instead of just away from getting from point A to point B. Okay, you'll just enjoy it much more that way, I think. Okay, one last thing before we go. Last week, Judith asked me a question. She said sometimes when she's working with Tina's patterns, the back side of her garment will hang up a little high and will poke out. And she wanted a suggestion for how to fix that. So my suggestion is you need a little extra length in the back. So what I would do is add, say, 3 or 4 inches to the garment all the way around the bottom, at the front and the back, at the hemline. Cut out your garment as normal. Just ignore that 3 or 4 inches at the bottom. At the end, when you're ready to do the hemming, try it on. Sort out the front hemline, where you want the front to hang. And then from there, taper it down about 2 inches at the center back hemline. And then you'll have to cut your hem. When you cut your hem, it will literally be uneven, but you will have a garment that hangs lower in the back and won't poke out. That is my suggestion. I have not tried it, but I think that's what I would do. If anybody else has a recommendation for solving this issue, please leave it in the comments, because I think we would all benefit from that. And I think that is it for me this week. The only other thing I'm going to say is we're not done. Next week, we're going to be talking about pants. So until then, you guys, I wish you all happy sewing.